I feel exceptionally lucky to be here with all of you and exceptionally lucky to share the story of a really remarkable individual who set me on my path. At the age of 5, I met my best friend and one of the greatest loves of my life on the school bus. I was walking up the steps. It was a typical afternoon, and as I came up, I saw her sitting there. Long, blonde, pigtail braids, bright, vibrant blue eyes, and this tooth-grin smile. And she said, "Hey, I'm Sarah. Do you want to sit with me?" And I said, "Hey, I'm Marian, of course." We spent the next 15 minutes just completely entrenched in typical things that 5-year-olds would talk about. Our favorite colors, what we liked to do in school, our pets' names, how much we both loved and hated our older brothers. All of the good things, really. After that 15 minutes flew by and my stop was coming up, Sarah and I looked at each other with a modicum of distress, and we said, how are we going to stay in touch? This was far before cell phones were everywhere. So we frantically looked for a pen or pencil, but to no avail, we could find anything to write with. Sarah looked at me and she said, "You know what? I have a really easy phone number, and I'll teach it to you." I said, "All right, Sarah, but I gotta tell you, digit spans, not my thing. I'll try my best." Little did I realize that this would be the first of about 1,000,000 things that Sarah would continue to teach me over time. So she said, "Okay, we're gonna sing it together. Are you all ready?" She said, "It's 5865867, 5865867, 5865867. Probably the easiest phone number out there. But I still was so intent on making sure that I didn't drop a single one of those numbers that I went flying off that school bus, running all the way home, bursting through that front door and screaming, "Mom, 5865867. She said, "Okay, Marian, I got it. That's great." What was really remarkable about that day is that even at that tender age, we recognized something really special in one another. For whatever reason, we really found one of our people that we were meant to walk this life and this world with. And from that day on, we were genuinely inseparable. Towards the end of 1st grade, both Sarah and I, a year into our friendship at that point, started to show different discrepancies from what would be considered normative development. For myself, I was pretty articulate, thought of as being highly creative, compassionate, empathetic, yet I was having an extraordinarily difficult time learning how to read, whereas all of my peers were seamlessly able to get right on page. For Sarah, her presentation was that she was having difficulty with some fine motor skills, so she would unexpectedly drop a pen or a pencil. She would trip in the hallway for no particular reason, and then there were times when she would go to speak and couldn't find her words. So under the support of incredibly exceptional and supportive educators and families, Sarah and I respectively went through a myriad of testing, myself for learning disabilities and Sarah a smattering of neurological tests. I got my results back first, and it was a beautiful alphabet soup. There was a twinge of dyslexia, a pretty vast range of auditory processing deficits, which is what it was titled at the time, and then, of course, a pinch of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD. As a 6-year-old, I had no idea what this meant. Even as an inclusive practices advocate, sometimes there can be many shades within that of understanding. So I received this diagnosis, and I said, okay, whatever. Life goes on. I'm not sure what this means. And shortly after, Sarah received a much more devastating and real diagnosis. She was found to have a progressive neuromuscular neurodegenerative disease called Friedreich's ataxia. Friedreich's ataxia affects about 10,000 people in the US, and it is unfortunately progressive. The life expectancy from onset is generally prognosis is about 5 to 10 years. So being diagnosed at the age of 6 was beyond devastating for everybody. So Sarah and I, coming with our test results and our parents both kind of confused by the whole thing, we looked at each other and we said, well, we don't know what this means, we don't know where we're headed, but we know we're headed into it together. We became natural accommodations for one another. I fondly remember 3rd grade where we were co-authoring stories together. I think my favorite was the 3 Kitty Cats Gruff. She would pen the stories with great articulation and eloquence, and I would illustrate them. As we would walk through the hallways together, I would hold on to Sarah's long rainbow suspenders, making sure that she didn't trip or fall. And similarly, when we were in the classroom and I would get off task, as I tended to always do, she would gently guide me back to paying attention. Sarah and I had 26 years of this beautiful friendship, of getting to love the world together in a really remarkable way. We had accommodations and modifications within that far exceed any individualized education plan or 504 you can find. And she is really the root of all that I do and that my life has become. Following Sarah's passing in November of 2012, my world stopped. It wasn't unexpected. We felt incredibly lucky for the time that we had, and yet it was beyond devastation. So naturally, I turned back to her, and looking at her life of living with courage, laughter, and love, I said, my I will and my I believe statements need to be reflective of her love and what she's given the world. So as you heard in the introduction, my life is committed to building and supporting inclusive learning communities through the arts. I have this gargantuan belief that healthcare and education are human rights. And I know that from my experience and from Sarah's experience, and knowing that if we had not had both each other and the systems of support that we had, neither one of us would be who we are today and have this impact as well. I also believe that artists can come up with genuinely creative, innovative, and important discoveries when it comes to both identifying and eradicating inequities in both healthcare and education systems on a national and international scale. Correspondingly, just about 15 months ago, we launched Arts Connect International, which is a local nonprofit who is really building or searching to build the global inclusion movement one artist at a time. Our mission is to cultivate and connect leaders in the arts field who are committed to cultural and social inclusion. In our call for proposals, we ask our artist leaders 3 core questions. The first we asked is, what is your social justice tool of choice? AKA, what's your art form? And why do you use that as your social justice tool? The second question that we ask is, where do you want to spend the next year of your life living, growing, and learning in an international community? Who do you hope to collaborate with, and why? And then third, and I think most importantly, we ask them, what is the human rights issue that wakes you up first thing in the morning and prevents you from going to bed at night? In the same way that health and education equity and my relationship and love for Sarah have guided my path. I could easily go on for the rest of, well, this conference, talking about our artist leaders because they are genuinely exceptional, and I've been very lucky to work with 7 so far. We have Andre with us today, one of them up front. But thankfully, I don't have to do that because we have a world premiere video for you where all of them will be talking about their particular lens on inclusion. So complementing their artwork, you'll hear their definition. And the big takeaway here that I think is really important in building this community and in building this movement is that our definition of inclusion is defined by the artist leaders themselves. It's collective, it's collaborative, and they are the vision.
To me, inclusion means having voice in the conversations, the creative conversations that cultivate our communities and culture. So as an artist, I seek to create spaces where these conversations and dialogue can be had. And then from there, I find it my responsibility to give vision to that voice.
I think a lot about ageism, and I think ageism is a very strange prejudice to have, because it's one where we eventually become the other. Hopefully we eventually become the other that we discriminate against. So in the best case scenario, we're all going to live long, healthy lives and become old as well.
Inclusion means to me to be able to have access to whatever you're passionate about, whatever is important. It's to have access to the voice of others, and to have a channel for your voice as well.
In order to understand inclusion, I come from the perspective of also having to understand exclusion. A lot of my art focuses on dualism. So in order to have one, you must have the other. And I think that communication can do a lot of things. It can educate and destroy. It can grow and repress. And so for me, inclusion is really trying to utilize as many non-verbal ways of communication. And that's art.
When we talk about inclusion, I want to introduce the idea of encompassing human beings as every single human as being impacted by war generationally. And that's a dialogue that is yet to be included in public platform.
I think a lot of times when people think about inclusion, they think about this idea of assimilation, which I don't think is the same thing. Inclusion is basically giving people the right and the abilities and empowering a group of people in order to achieve equity. And that is really essential to a lot of the work that the artists are doing that are part of Arts Connect International. That's very important to my work, the idea of inclusion through empowering marginalized groups.